Now, before we get started, I just want to throw up a quick poll. So the question is, what's had the largest impact on your business growth? So it looks like referrals was number one, technology, community networking, and marketing was last. What's interesting though is all of these actually tie back to community. Referrals happen because of trust, networking is community, marketing works better when it reflects real community. The question is about whether we're building it on purpose. For me, this topic's very personal. We're all running businesses, but the people in this industry, we're also builders. We build trust, we build relationships, and we build experiences. And often, whether you call it that or not, that is building community. We're going to start by defining what community actually means in an advisory context, and then we'll get into what's working. We're going to talk about leadership, impact, and the barriers. Near the end, I'll also share a soft launch of something we're building within AdvisorFlow, community forums. I'm very grateful to have two gentlemen who I know as being the top when it comes to building community in Canada, Reid McGruer and Cooper Millard. Reid brings a long-term perspective on relationships. He's been a long-time leader in my community, and I'm fortunate to have met him about 12 years ago now. Cooper brings a very practical and current approach in seeing what high-performing practices are doing today. So, Reid, when we say community in an advisory context, what does that actually mean to you? And how do learning, growth, volunteerism, and philanthropy fit into that definition?
Thanks, Brandon. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity to share some of the lessons that I've learned. And my hope is that through sharing some of the things that we spend a lot of time working on and trying to do better at over so many years, I'll be able to share some lessons that people can get their own thought process working towards how they're going to build stronger communities. When I think about the community in this industry, the industry itself is huge, banks, stockbrokers, and so on. But the industry that we're in as financial advisors, community is really about the people that we work with in our offices day to day, the clients that we work with, the MGAs that we work with, the dealers that we work with, and, the industry, advocates, another one, KLU, for example. And as you mentioned, things that come to mind when I think is number one, trust, right? Building trust relationships. And I use the word relationship. We're in a relationship business that has not changed. Even in the digital age, people still do business with us because two reasons: they like us and they trust us. And trust goes beyond just, I trust you as a person. It's also, I trust you as a professional. So those are some of the things that I think define the communities that we work in. And I do want to give a quick plug for our side of the industry. I learned something a long time ago. My brother is a stockbroker. He would go to events, webinars, and all that, and he would often say the advisors in his side of the business do not share. And in our side of the business, we're always sharing. So we should be grateful for this.
Well, Reid, you certainly inspired me to do that. That's kind of why I got these webinars going. Is during the pandemic, a lot of the stuff that we did back in Vancouver, Georgia was happening a little bit less. And no fault of anyone, the world is figuring out what COVID meant. But I'm going to continue to carry the torch forward thanks to your leadership. And I appreciate you coming on to share your expertise with us today. Now, Cooper, on the practical side, from your perspective, how are advisors building relationships with MGAs, dealer partners, their broader professional network today? And what's changed? Where do you think advisors may be missing opportunities when it comes to communities?
Great question. I think it's dramatically changed. And I think that you would agree. I think that Reid would agree. Hopefully most people on this call would agree. The way in which that we build relationships and interact with each other, not only in a post-COVID world, but since the late 90s, has changed fundamentally. Gone are the days where we'd show up at a Holiday Inn on a Wednesday morning and enjoy some stale muffins and burnt coffee and get together with 150 of our closest friends and catch up and share about what's going on and change ideas. Now they're virtual, and those opportunities to connect are fewer and farther between. So we need to seek out ways to connect and build relationships farther between. So we need to seek out ways to connect and build relationships, not only between sort of distribution partners and advisors, but also between advisors and their clients and the end consumer. I think that the way in which that MGAs operate have fundamentally changed, especially in today's age of mass amalgamation. relationships can tend to be far more transactional than they should be. This, again, has only increased with MGAs sort of joining forces and insurance carriers purchasing up MGAs. And it's not a critique. It's a fact. It's the way the industry is going. That pendulum has swung from sort of vested and captive distribution, where you'd go to Peterborough, Ontario, and there'd be a Manulife office and a Desjardins office and a, Confed Life office. And you'd go to each of those offices to get information, all the way over to independent. And it seems as though that there's more captive agencies out there again. And for the end consumer, the fact remains the same. They can go on the interweb and, search up term insurance rates and you go try and call someone. But in terms of advisors relating to their distribution networks, when you're a number on a page, it becomes very difficult to do so. So how are we at an MGA or as a wholesaler finding ways in which we can connect with advisors? Well, part of it's going to be digital. You have to hopefully be comfortable with following your clients or prospect on social media, online, see what's going on their website, what's going on in their business. How can you relate to them? How can you pick up the details that are going to be important? What's going to be important to them? A business partner that only provides administration will become increasingly interchangeable. A partner that helps a client feel understood, safe, connected, and confident can be a genuine long-term partner no matter the era.
A lot to unpack there, Coop, but I agree with you. At the end of the day, the world's always evolving. The technology and digital experiences weren't really a thing 20 years ago. They were just getting off the ground. Now it's sort of expected that someone shares something online and you don't know that they did that. Almost like, are we actually friends? Because are we connected on these platforms where you'll see the most important things happening in my life? Before it was like you're going to text all your friends and say, hey, look, I had a kid. And you might still do that with a few of them, but social media kind of has filled in some of that gap.
Yeah, 100%. And, as it relates to sort of missed opportunities, you don't have to look any further than social media to find those missed opportunities. And let's say, for example, someone does a community barbecue and you get 6 people or 6 clients show up and this has happened, I know, in the past with a number of folks, and you're panicking and you're inviting your neighbor, your friend, your buddies who may not be clients, but you just want to fill the room to get the photo to put on LinkedIn. It's almost performative, but it happens, right? It's part of that experience. And as you start to sort of build a community and run events, it's trial and error, right? So one of the biggest missed opportunities is treating community building as an occasional event or just an excuse for a social media post. Again, as we mentioned, Brandon, we talk about this all the time. On LinkedIn, far too many people are speaking and far too few people are listening. Community is built through, in my opinion, repeated valuable touch points, right? And a concerted effort to connect people together. It's not just a community barbecue. It's the value and the half-life of the interactions that are had at that barbecue, right? So another missed opportunity would be sort of assuming you need to create a community from scratch. That's just not true. So many of us are involved in a number of communities. As we're sitting here, we can list off a couple, right? Your neighborhood, right? Walking down the street, seeing your neighbors, getting together with your neighborhood and, doing something, with the kids in the neighborhood. A business association, professional industry, as we mentioned, KLU, Advocates. That's a community that I think many of us grew up in that has also changed dramatically, right? So a sports club, golf, of course, pickleball counts, for those pickleball players online. It does still count as a sport, I guess. A charity, whatever you're involved in, start there, start small and study what makes that community tick and what's going to be valuable to those people, and approach it not by how you can sell and what you can sell. Approach it by what you can contribute and how you can relate to those individuals. And if you approach it from that lens, it's far more easy to penetrate any given marketplace and understand the end consumer far better, because people don't get their back up. People don't just assume you're selling them, right? People do business with the people they like. So be likable, be present, give without any sort of thought of reward, and good things will happen. That sounds hokey, but it's 100% true. So don't enter a community asking how to market it. The best coaches will always tell you, the business coaches in this world, and I've heard this come up a couple of times, and this is the second time we brought up golf. Let's try and stay away from too many golf references here, but the best coaches will say, you do not pitch the client on the first 9 or even the second 9. You ask them as many questions as humanly possible for 18 holes and earn the privilege of their curiosity later, right? So that's the idea, right? You're trying to build communities, to bring people together to find commonality, and then, of course, book some meetings after you've earned trust in the future.
Yeah, I love that. It's like Reed and I were talking about this at KLU, where you get invited to lunch with a wholesaler, and then right at the end of lunch, so when can we get some business? It just totally rubs you the wrong way, because you're like, we're just building a relationship, and you clearly aren't really focused on the relationship. You're just looking for business, and
all of the goodwill that was laid, the foundation before that, is now lost, because the only thing they remember is there were bad intentions, right? Not bad intentions, but there was a hidden agenda, right? So surprise people, try and be surprising. And yes, there's an agenda, of course, always, right? There's the goal is to make money and to find opportunities to plan and to sell financial instruments. But at the end of the day, that doesn't always have to be the purpose of conversation or an interaction.
The best opportunities will come from being consistent and without expectation. Now, Reed, how did the Vancouver, Georgia community get started? I recognize they came towards the second inning or later inning. And then how did that evolve over time?
There's definitely I started in Ottawa in the Ottawa Financial Center, and there was a community there, and they, especially the guy that hired me, Bill Holmes, always did things like, hey, let's do Pizza Fridays and just bring the advisors together. We're involved with advocates. We had company hockey tournaments, company softball tournaments, like I said, Pizza Fridays. And the other thing that I want to talk about is recognition, because I think that in this world of the list, and I can't stand the list thing, although I appreciate the list thing, almost all companies, MGAs and everything their idea is like, well, let's make a list. We got 80 on the list and let's concentrate on the top 20. Well, if you keep making lists, you're going to exclude a lot of people. This is one of the reasons that webinars can actually be inclusive, which is good, but that's not the touch. That's not the personal touch. And that's what I feel is sometimes getting lost in this digital age. So how can people get beyond the list and try to think forward about how do you develop the next generation? Because if you're going to consistently win, which is, again, back to your question, is we tried to think about how do you consistently stay on top? Kind of like, the New England Patriots for so many years. What are they doing differently in an age where salary cap is the norm? What can you do that's special to create a different magic within the communities that you're in to propel you to succeed annually? And it's just more fun to win. And you see the Ralph Simmons there, which we were privileged to win 4 times, but came in second 3. Not bad, losing the Stanley Cup, but you don't want to lose. Winning's more fun. But it's taking some of those things. And I think one of the best lessons I can say, and Cooper mentioned it, is get your hands dirty, right? One of the things that we did is, and when I say we, our leadership team, we all got our hands dirty. We all would do things that people don't do, which is a lot of people, it's, hey, I've got a corporate credit card I can spend. So let's go to dinner or lunch or whatever. And hey, can I have business? Well, it's a lot different if you're hosting them at your house for dinner or having them up for the weekend to your cabin.
Well, and I think that says a lot about why there's loyalty, right? Reed had my wife and I up to the cabin. We were probably a few months in the business. I definitely had not created a profitable relationship for Freedom 55 Financial at the moment. But yeah, it was Docktails. It was Reed flying a drone around, landed in my wife's hair. These memorable things that wouldn't occur in an office setting, but that built that relationship with Reed and Izumi, that I know that they care and they're investing in me before I've provided anything to them. And I don't want to let them down. So therefore, I'm going to work harder because they invested in me. And I do think Reed's right. This is definitely getting lost with many brokerages where they've got their list, because you're not investing in that next generation and they're feeling lost. And you're expecting us as firm owners to do it. And we're trying, but we're freaking busy. We don't have staff resources as much as maybe some of these large organizations do. So we're doing our best, but I think the MGA and dealer leadership really should be focused on how can we help everybody who's on our full list, as opposed to just ignoring the bottom 50%. So Reed, let's talk a bit more about those things. You talk about times up the cabin, but what were like the regular touch points that you did at Vancouver, Georgia, and how did that translate into sort of business or success as an organization?
Yeah, great question. One of the things that I learned early in the business is if you have a problem, turn it into a procedure. When I say the word procedure, that doesn't mean that it's just cyclical. It still has to have care and love. So one of the things that we did was we always made sure to have something quarterly that people could always talk about, look forward to. By the time they were talking about how great the last thing was, we could start talking about what's upcoming. And it's the same thing as, you've seen me talk about Vacation Man, always plan to have vacations out there. So there's always an access point in the future that people can look forward to. Plus, what we tried to do is not just think about advisors. We had to think about, there's advisors, there's your product support people, there's the leadership team, there's spouses, there's the administration staff, spouses of the administration staff, and there's children. So how do we get everybody involved in some of these events so that even the kids would say to their parents, Mom, wow, what an office you work at. Such great people. This is so cool. When's the Christmas event coming up? Am I going to sit in Santa's lap again? It's those kinds of things. So I said, if you have a problem, turn it into a procedure, but don't forget about the care and the love.
Who was Santa, by the way?
Shocker.
Well, and this shows that you I love the get your hands dirty phrase, because it's very clear you were doing things that no one else was doing. And I sometimes think when people are part of an organization, they think, well, that's not my job. It's not my job description. And if you have that mindset, it's really hard to build a community if no one, especially those at the top, are not getting their hands dirty. It's easy to put on the polished pitch on stage or on a webinar, but to actually flip the burgers or be Santa Claus, that takes some humble perspective in order to do that for the people that you care about, and that ideally will be caring about you and your organization as well.
There was one Christmas party where originally it was the leadership team that was doing it. And then the administration team, to their credit, jumped in and said, you know what, this is great. We want it. We want to take over this. But Reed, you're still Santa. But one time after we're cleaning up from the Christmas event, one of my leaders says, nobody can come in and complain on Monday, right? This is a Sunday. And I said, they weren't all here. So not everybody knows all the care and love and effort and getting your hands dirty that we just did, because they weren't necessarily there, but hopefully they're going to talk to some other people. But what I want to also emphasize is, in this world, it is hard to find and keep good people. The number one reason people leave is their leader. Think about that. Pull the thumbs, don't point the fingers. If people are leaving you, don't think, well, it's them, it's their problem. Well, maybe we didn't like them anyway. Well, you picked them in the first place. So, figure out a way to make those people happy with where they are, because we are not in the industrial age anymore. And I took this Covey course years ago where it talked about, in the industrial age, people, you remember the lining up, waiting for a truck to pick them up, jump on there because they needed to feed their family. Well, that's not the age that we live in. If people need food, there are lots of places they can go to in their communities to get fed. Yes, there's still a drug problem, and I admit there's, the world isn't perfect. However, the people that we tend to be working with in the white collar life, they don't need your job. They don't need your paycheck, but they want to be in a place that gives them meaning, value, where they're appreciated. So it's incumbent on the leadership to think about, what are ways that we can create a culture where our people will volunteer their efforts well beyond their job towards the mission and vision and values of where they work.
I love that. I remember Richie at Pender Trips creating those bennies for us. So it's a perfect example. He's an advisor, but he loves what you're doing and he wants to help.
And Angelo with the lamb.
Angelo with the lamb. Exactly. Exactly. Now let's tie this over to advisor groups. Now, Cooper, you see a bunch of different advisor teams. How are they building community? And what are some of the interesting things you've seen over the last few years that have really helped grow advisor businesses while building community?
Dovetails quite well, because I did want to approach this from a more micro perspective, in that you don't have to necessarily have events or have events-based marketing or bring people together to necessarily, act in a community building ethos or attempt to build communities, within your network. Now, the strongest sort of community building advisors, or at least the advisors with the best retention, persistency, and brand strength, are simply intentional about the relationships they cultivate long before there's an immediate business opportunity. They don't necessarily describe this as community building. They, or their brand, their staff, or their network, simply have a habit of being useful and collaborative. And in this way, the advisor does not need to know all of the answers, right? I don't know what Reed would suggest or other advisors on this call would suggest. What's the percentage base of a question a client has or a challenge they have? What's the percentage you could just answer right over the phone? And what's the percentage you take away? So, what? I don't know the answer, but I'm going to get back to you within the next 24 hours. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be a trusted point of contact with the foundational relationship capital that I've earned over time to be provided the patience to find a solution by either within your own sort of office or by leveraging internal or external contacts. Another differentiator would be with the consistency. Top advisors in this space don't rely on a one singular large annual event. They maintain a rhythm of smaller micro communications, introductions, and sort of educational sessions, along with the personal touches throughout the year. Staying connected between transactions and review meetings is going to be far more sustainable than trying to have a few thousand people to an event on an annual basis. Though events are incredibly important, and it's something that we, at our MGA are incredibly passionate about, we would not be able to host those events without the relational hard work and getting everyone's hands dirty. Everyone on our management team makes these proactive calls. Everyone attends events. Our staff are reachable and speak over the phone. And our advisors have their direct lines. There's no holding. There's no, back and forth. It's always speaking with an individual and building confidence and trust throughout the way. And when you have that confidence and trust and that sort of ability to understand an advisor's business or a client's lifestyle, more innately, it's far more second nature to be able to determine ways in which to connect them with either other clients, other advisors, or other people in your wider network that they may benefit from getting to know, right? This is absolutely easier said than done. And I do believe later we have specific questions about practice management pieces and events that attendees to this call might want to implement. I don't want to be duplicative. I just wanted to speak in a more philosophical approach.
There's a lot of things you can do, but I think what I'm hearing is consistency. It's about doing things that aren't already happening. Like there's tons of webinars, right? And I know I'm hosting webinars. I don't have the resources to throw a big conference like some of you guys have in the past, but the in-person stuff really does make a difference. The digital stuff helps and it's a good supplement, but doesn't replace the in-person. Now, how does that actually translate to business outcomes? So Reed, I'll maybe go to you first. You talked about Ralph Simmons. You talked about how that generated business, I would say, as an organization, but more specifically, how did advisors grow because of community?
It gets back to one of the things I mentioned earlier about sharing. So there was always that expectation within our advisors and our top advisors. They wanted to give back because they grew up in that world where others gave back to them. So you need to create a culture that permeates that level of the aspiration of people to make sure that they know that they have a responsibility to give back to the next generation, just like people gave to them. We were privileged in the last number of years to have a 4-year retention of new advisors that hovered between 35 and 50%. So when we're interviewing somebody, we're telling them that basically you're going into an unknown place where our retention rates are as good as the salary world. And why? It's a lot of the things that we did: processes, systems, learning, making sure that they understood getting your CFP was significantly important and it was an expectation. And the culture that was there were people that would help them. Like, as you remember, Brandon, being around the teaming table, you knew you could ask anyone. You knew you could ask any of the leaders for help, right? You didn't have to go to your director. You could go to anybody, and you could also go to any advisor. So it's difficult to do, but it is something that we need to strive for in a consistency, as Cooper mentioned, that we create this culture of an expectation that people will succeed together. Everyone achieves more, the acronym for team. So in a world where some people are individually building their own practices, how do we bring that team concept to light? And again, from advisor practices and larger advisor practices, I know that that's what they're all thinking about. How do we get the best? And sometimes, as we found, it's about finding the right seat on the bus for people. So sometimes when we find that people are not doing what we'd hoped they would do, we obviously need to diagnose. We need to see where we can help. We need to see what we can do to get the result that they want. Because guess what? They probably want it more than you. They should. And if they don't, that is a problem. But we wanted to encourage them to understand what they like doing and what they're really good at. And sometimes we went, you know what? Maybe this advisor thing isn't great for you, but maybe talk to the administration people. Maybe that's an option for work for a few years, and maybe you'll have a change of heart, or maybe be able to join a team. So we had people that started as advisor, became admin. We had people that started as admin, became advisors, and a lot of success. Like you know a lot of the people that I'm thinking of. So it is sometimes about finding the right seat on the bus. And when you do that, people really understand that you care about them. It's not about they're not achieving business results. Everyone feels bad about that, but maybe we just need to figure out a better way to get to the end result.
Yeah, I love that, Reed. And wow, there's so many stories that can be shared based on what you describe. But one that's close to home for me is my associate Eileen started as an intern at AdvisorFlow, doing some business development, learned about the industry, got into the Freedom Training Program before it got shut down, and now is a successful associate on my firm. And she's starting her CFP, she's doing all the right things. But the fact that we had that flow from interest in the industry, figuring out the path she wanted to go down, and then a place to get trained, licensed, and start running made a huge difference. And I think there's a ton of loyalty that was built because of that. It was a shame that there's not a whole lot of that happening in the industry now. It's really up to firms to sort out. Now, let's talk a bit about how advisors can balance servicing clients and building community. Now, I do a few things, and because I have a team in technology, I probably do a bit more online than most. But if we think about the average advisor who is just running their business, but does want more community in their life, maybe isn't getting it in their existing relationships, whether that's their local Kiwanis club or they're not playing sports, how can they build community and how can that support them while they're building their business?
Another great question, as always. Thanks, Brennan. So I think the first piece here, and this is something we talked about in the supporting the pre-calls that we had this meeting, was community building or approaching community should not sit outside of the business as an additional project. It really can and should be incorporated into the way the practice already operates. So in speaking with a few advisors and preparing for the call, from practice management piece, we do have a few fantastic suggestions for attendees to incorporate, a couple different practice management pieces from a community building lens. So first and foremost, it's just being human, right? Like one of the most difficult times in a client's life is at the time of a death claim. Right. A loved one has been lost, and, the last thing you're thinking about is paperwork. But of course, you have to approach the reality, and that's will, that's estate planning, that's money changing hands, that's beneficiaries. And that is part in speaking with an advisor. So yes, it's an incredibly important time and trying time for the advisor and client, the relationship. You're delivering a death claim, you're speaking with beneficiaries, and you're helping them plan their life after maybe the most difficult, experience of their life. And that's a beautiful, beautiful opportunity to communicate value and to build a relationship and to support. But a year later, after that's said and done, what are you doing for them, right? So in speaking with an advisor, she has a fabulous automation within her practice that reminds them of any date of a client passing and prompts her to make a personal call to every beneficiary and surviving spouse, and if a tier 1 or tier 2 client, probably the wider family network, just to check in to see how they're doing. There's no agenda. You just check in and see how they're doing, and in sort of protecting and safeguarding and reaching out and ensuring that you're keeping in touch and tabs with that micro community of an individual family, you make yourself far more valuable, far more memorable, quite frankly, far more referable as someone who genuinely cares about the sort of mental wellness of each individual that you're working with, right? Going further to that, the checking in calls. We have another advisor we work with on the same subject of the death claim. He has this great saying, we'll be there for you long after the last frozen lasagna gets heated up in the oven. So he'll check in on the first Christmas after, the first Easter after, the first anniversary after, the first birthday. And again, that may not be sustainable for advisors out there who have thousands of clients, but it doesn't necessarily have to be you. Yes, we want to get our hands dirty, as Reed mentioned earlier. There's more sort of relationship capital in doing so. You make a better impression when you yourself make that call. But at the very least, an automated email, having your staff reach out, plan for more touch points to ensure that your clients are doing well. You're building relationships in that way, but these are things that you can work into your practice management strategy. Above and beyond that, make notes in your CRM when you have these engagements, right? That's something I can be way better at in terms of keeping CRMs up to date. But, kids' names, their interests, their birthday, their favorite football team. Hopefully it's not the Patriots. But these are things that remain important because the next time you go to speak with them, It might be a review meeting. There might become a time that they're approaching 75 years old. They're going to lose their opportunity to convert. They may have the money, but not the interest. But these are those sort of small interactions that help to build that trust when you say, listen, you're running out of options here. You don't have to convert, but you're running out of options. I really need you to book this meeting with me to go through what those options are. Far more likely that that's going to be booked if you have that standard sort of operating relationship where you can just be candid with them because of all of the touch points that you've built over a long duration. So in terms of touch point management strategy, updated communication, the number of block transfers that we've gone through and reassignment programs where there's 400 clients, maybe a third of them have updated emails or addresses or even less so phone numbers. You got to keep that up to date. Not only does that help you with your sort of community, that helps you for the eventual succession plan that you'll be going through. Hopefully you have a business continuity plan, succession plan, but that helps increase the value of your practice, right? That helps increase, the engagement of your client base. So just call, hey, making sure this is still your email. Are you receiving our communications? Do you find any value in it? Have you read it? To let them know you're paying attention. That's incredibly important for the people who aren't opening your emails. Maybe there's a reason they're not engaging. So either yourself or your staff can make those calls. Those are all valuable touch points. You're not selling at all, but you're making sure that you tell them that you're paying attention. These are all incredibly valuable. So how many digital touch points do you have? As your team follow on social media, we do have one advisor we work with, and I think this is great. For a half hour a day, their staff are encouraged to operate their individual corporate Instagram. And again, I'm not sure if Reed or Brandon, you believe that you've ever seen an IFA sold on TikTok and a dance. I don't know of anyone selling large cases on TikTok and dancing and doing selfies and stuff, but maybe it's happening. But I think the real value of social media is just staying in touch with your clients and seeing what's going on in their life, right? Was there a recent graduation? Did your son or daughter go into medical school? Did you just move? Did you buy a new cottage? Did you sell a cottage? Are you selling the business, right? Is there an anniversary coming up? These are all very valuable touch point opportunities. You don't necessarily get that unless you're having conversations with your clients every day, and that's not realistic. So empower your staff to be authors, if not editors, of your narrative or story, right? Have them actively contribute to the understanding and the relationships that you can build with your clients by simply empowering or building your CRM database with more information on your clients that you can simply review before a call or a meeting. This makes you more referable. This makes it more likely that they'll open your promotional material, and it does help to create a sort of insulated and dependable ecosystem around your practice. And more likely they call you for tax and legal and lending and group benefits and estate planning advice, right? So this additional understanding and building community into your practice management and touch point operations is a fantastic way at a local level to be able to work towards building stronger and longer lasting relationships.
Wow, lots of notes I hope folks are taking from that little segment, Coop. I completely agree with you, and we try to do some of these things. And of course, if you got 1,000 clients, you can't do this for everybody. But whether it's the phone call about the death claim a year after, or it's the birthday or current event, even for folks that don't want to post on social, just be a lurker. You can be like Reed. You can just go on social, never post anything, and he still knows what's going on. And that's okay. But it's better to do that and show that you care than post a bunch of stuff and never engage or never talk to anyone, because that doesn't help anyone. Cool. That was very helpful. Now let's go to Reed first for this.
But there's some great photos, by the way. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. Well, some of the events you guys have put on are just incredible. And I had the pleasure of going to a Griffin Summit, Deerfield Beach. We were fishing on a boat, hanging out, got to meet a lot of great people on the Griffin side. These sort of marquee events are important for clients and for MGAs and dealers because it creates memorable experiences like Reed was talking about. You can't do the big things once, four times a year, but you can do one a year, choose who you bring out, and then you can do some more local stuff that's maybe a little more cost effective, but invite everybody. Like in our firm, we do these larger events for our bigger clients where Funco comes out, wine and dine, 3-course meal, but then we'll do smaller events, running clients invited. It's barbecue style, lower cost, but bring them together. And whether you're an MGA dealer or an advisor, these are things you can do. You just need to actually do it and care for it. It's clear that Reed and Vancouver, Georgia, they had a content calendar for the year. Every quarter, these are our big things. Here's our little things, and then clockwork. And they just improved it all the time. All of us have the ability to do it, but you have to track what's working and actually consistently do it. But anyway, the question I was going to ask first to Reed is, what do you think the most successful advisory firms are going to look like in 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, good question. I think that when I think of it, I think of the words well-oiled machine. You think of ones that when people come to work or engage in work, that they're excited about what they do. They feel they add value. They feel they contribute. They feel that they have meaning, and they feel that they're part of something. I mentioned those before, right? It goes way beyond your paycheck. The other thing I do want to mention is people feel recognized. Now, recognition is one of those things that over the years, you see people like, well, I don't really care about recognition. It's really not important to me. Hey, is there any chance you guys could have an award for the advisor that did the most disability sales in the last 3 months? You know, and it's like it is recognition is probably more important to people than money. Even recently, I read somebody's story who was in the business that's since retired. And they ask about milestones and life points. And of course, kids and family and vacations and everything are a huge part of that. But guess what? They also mentioned times in their life where they were recognized. These are things that if you can think about, if you even ask people like, when were you recognized for something? People could go, grade 4, I won the art competition. Grade 2, back to your point is, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's going to be a great culture, well-oiled machine. What does that mean? It means what I just talked about. Plus, what it does mean is obviously doing lots of volume of business and having systems and processes in place that have been made better over time to make sure that people are in touch with today's reality, but understanding the fundamental value that we are in a relationship business.
And Coop, from your perspective, what would you say that looks like?
In terms of future state, I think similar, heavily dependent on technology for efficiency's sake, and heavily dependent on people for volume and amalgamation, vertical integration sake. I do believe that we are selling practices at a rapid pace. And I don't think enough young people are joining the industry to meet that demand. So what's happening is, it's similar to the sort of P&C industry. We're seeing a lot of larger firms purchasing up advisory practices and client bases for the recurring revenue and the opportunity to sort of transact on a salaried basis or a junior advisory program to sort of build from within. So having said that, community building, the mom and pop advisory practice in, Fergus, Ontario, or, Meaford, or, these sort of more rural towns, it is becoming harder to come by. It appears as though there's a brand new fintech platform leveraging AI coming out every single week. I know our management team is prospected to jump on a call with one of those on an almost daily basis, either in Canada or abroad. So advisors' attention and the different ways in which that they can find efficiencies related to spawning that demand from clients from all over Canada in a digital world is going to dramatically increase, which means that there's going to be probably a little less time for relationship building. And that's just a fact of the economics of our industry. So in terms of what these practices are going to look like, they're going to look similar with respect to the sort of metronome of your daily life. You're going to have more digital meetings for clients all across Canada. You're going to have more intergenerational wealth planning meetings with an aging baby boomer population, the single largest intergenerational wealth transfer in human history going on. And that's still going to be going on in 10 years. A ton of businesses being sold. There's a ton of opportunity for people who are in this industry right now. The threats are apathy. And an increasingly competitive marketplace. The threats are losing good people within your firm because of the frequency in which people are prospected from across our industry to be repurposed. Group benefits is incredibly difficult to find good people to work in group benefits right now, considering how many people are just migrating from company to company. So I think that building a community, not only within your own individual organization and within your client base and within your wider COI, is a fantastic way to insulate yourself from this, not only apathy, but also professional or client leak or exodus, making sure that you involve your clients and your staff in major decisions going forward, making certain that you recognize achievements, as Reid has said, and making absolutely certain that you keep your eye on the ball. And what's the reason that you're in this business? What is our why, right? Our why is to make sure that we take care of people. And if you keep going back to that and you build a community, you make yourself valuable, you have meaningful conversations, and you don't just get caught up in the meeting to meeting, you set time aside for yourself to make those personal calls. I know some advisors do believe in time blocking. Either it's going to be a day or an hour a day. where you set aside time for booking planning meetings or recognizing client achievements or lifestyle changes or a sale of a business or internal in-force block mining. Those are the people that are going to be successful long term. The advisors who continue to just do what they've always done. And why do we do it? Well, we do it because we've always done it this way. Those are the advisors that will lose clients, miss out on opportunities, and fail to be successful moving into the future.
Once again, Coop, a lot to unpack there. One piece that a thread I'll pull on there is as it relates to book purchases and things transitioning. What's worked really well on my side with transitions is keeping the retiring advisor as involved as they want to be, because those relationships do not transition easily. 20 or 30 years can be packed up into a year in terms of transferring trust. And then hosting events with the retiring advisor's perspective on how to make those events meaningful for those clients. And that's really helped us retain assets and then also grow relationships with clients in the book of business. So I'd agree with you. I think the firms of the future are going to be tech enabled. They're still going to be community focused. They're still going to care, but they're also going to have tech people, whether it's them doing it themselves or team members. Like we got, Faith helping us today to make this thing run smoothly. Advisor firms should have tech people. Alan Lynn did all this stuff for Vancouver, Georgia back in the day, and nothing would have ran as smoothly without Alan's support and care and attention to detail. So I see he's on the call today. Alan, thank you for being here. So what I'll say as we transition to a close is marketing is going to get you attention. Community is going to get you trust. At the end of the day, trust is the currency of our business. And both Reed and Cooper have a great deal of trust in their respective communities because they show they care on a consistent basis. And that doesn't mean just posting a lot on social media. That means actually reaching out to someone when something's going on in their life and showing they care. And I think all of us have the ability to do that in our respective networks, and that will never go out of style, regardless of how powerful AI is or how cool the next tool is that an advisor may use. So before I move into some closing comments, Reed, Cooper, any final thoughts on that thread?
No, that one, buddy. Go ahead, please take the wheel.
Yeah, I'm good. Hopefully, I think I've said it enough, but it's building the future. So we get so focused in on the day to day. A lot of, again, Cooper, like you said, a lot to unpack. The execution of what you discuss is what is waning. And I think it's incumbent on everybody, just sit down, beginning of the year, first week of January or whatever it is, and write out a business plan. I used to do it every single year. And you know what? I was surprised at how few times I had to pick it up, because once I committed it to my brain and once I then committed it to paper, it's in there. And you start working while you sleep. The brain is the most powerful thing. You will make decisions day to day based on thoughts that you put in your head and where you are going to in your future. So I encourage people that are on this call, I encourage MGAs, I encourage carriers and so on, is be inclusive, figure out how to be inclusive, figure out how to build your future, and figure out how to make your community a great place so you don't have to go and find the next person to replace the one you just lost.
I love it. And you're not paying for their attention all the time because people genuinely want to be around you because they know that you care. You're not always buying trust. You actually have that deep-seated trust. Now, I'm going to quickly run through something we've been working on the AdvisorFlow side. It's called community forums. And the reason why we're launching this is the same things Reed and Coop have talked about. The theme is that advisors have a ton of wisdom, but a lot of it maybe doesn't actually get captured. And that's why we do webinars like this, so we can capture some of the great ideas from people like Reed and Cooper. And now advisor practices each run independently, but there's a lot of similarities. Now, the wisdom that advisors may using to operate at a high level, it's happening in the client meetings, the family conversations, the events, maybe the claims experience, referral conversations. And unless someone writes those things down, like Reed said about the business plan, those ideas can disappear. And so we're soft launching community forums within AdvisorFlow. And the idea is pretty simple. It's to help advisors browse proven templates for gathering client information, build off existing workflows, and then share those safely across your team. Over time, we want this to become a way for advisors to share practice management ideas, client experience stories, event examples, and lessons that they're learning as they work with their clients. I'm big about sharing everything I do because I think if other advisors run great businesses, then the clients are going to know what working with an independent's like versus working with a bank or some big brokerage. I will request any of you provide any feedback you might have on this feature. Every feature we've added to the product has been based on advisor feedback. So this is a forum that's put together by Herman Chan. He's a Toronto-based advisor. It's called Corporate Discovery. And the reason he created this is for any of his business owner clients, he's asking the same questions every time and gathering the same documents. So this template will be available in the AdvisorFlow product next week. If you like it, be sure to add Herman on LinkedIn and give him a shout and say thank you. He's also got a personal financial assessment, which is essentially just ranking where people feel they're at. At Georgia, we had the IPS, or Introductory Planning Services questionnaire. I think every advisor should be having templates at different stages in the process and then customize them to your unique clientele. He's also added a field underwriting question, so you could send this to a client before you start asking them about their family history. So basically get the boring stuff taken out of the way so you can have a deeper value conversation. Parth Shah, he's a Toronto-based advisor as well. He works primarily in the wealth space, and so he's added a private wealth strategy assessment form. This will be available in the product next week. As the next step for today, if you're growing a team or scaling your advisor practice and want to know if there's any gaps in your process or technology, we're offering complimentary tech reviews. Brad on our team does a great job. He's been in the industry 20 years. And so he's going to be sending the recording to each of you on the call and offering this to you and your team. It's complimentary and there's no expectation you buy our software. If there's a better software for you, we'll make sure to point you in the right direction because every practice is unique. But ultimately, he'll give you some clear gaps in your practice and give you an action plan you can actually use. Thanks again to Reed and Cooper. You guys, I look up to a great deal, and I always look forward to seeing you at KLU or events in the community. And today, I appreciate your honesty and the practical examples that you were able to share. And thank you to all of you for joining today. My encouragement is to leave you with this idea. Pick one small action, one event, one client segment, or a COI group, and write down how you're going to build community in that group and be more intentional with your time. Thanks, everyone, and appreciate you joining us for the webinar on community today.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank
That
you.
was incredible. That was like the end there, dude. You smashed it. That was so good.
We're still live, Cooper, but I really do appreciate you.
We could still be live, right? Like the whole building of, like, get your hands dirty, do things that sometimes don't have an immediate ROI, right? But create an environment where future business can be conducted and future business occurs. You just did it, right? The community forums are fabulous. Herman Chan, you're a pleaser. Love you. But that's just so good. It's a fabulous way to bring people together and to build a digital community. That's amazing, man. Congratulations.
You played a big role in it, Coop, so appreciate your advisors that have helped out so far. Most of them, I don't think, are sharing the platform yet, but if you talk about it, people will do it.
You've just made yourself more referable. So I'm going to connect Brad with two advisors. We were speaking about it the other day. I'm just procrastinating, but connect them this afternoon, and I'll CC you so you know it was actually done.
You're the man. Well, for those of you that have stayed on to listen to our banter, hopefully this was valuable to you. You will get the recording over the next week or so. Please do share your feedback on this session, on the product. We're always listening. That's how these sessions get better. We're starting to think about what our fall event's going to be. So if you've got a topic that's sort of top of mind, you're not hearing it being talked about in the marketplace, let us know. We're always looking to bring on the best speakers on topics like this. And I was really fortunate to have Reed come on. I wasn't sure if he would, but he's been the heavy hitter hosting these type of sessions for years, and he did a great job on camera too. So thanks for coming in, Reed.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys. Well, enjoy the rest of the day, and thanks again.
You guys really appreciate the time.